April 8, 1943, 27,000 feet above Caen, France. The oxygen mask couldn't hide the smirk of Oberleutnant Ralph Hermichin. He watched the ungainly silhouettes climbing laboriously toward his formation. He radioed his wingmen, "The Yankees have sent us flying milk bottles." He laughed at the massive P-47 Thunderbolts struggling for altitude. To German pilots accustomed to sleek Spitfires, these corpulent American machines appeared almost comical, barrel-shaped fuselages, wings that seemed too small, propellers that dwarfed anything in the Luftwaffe inventory. But what Hermichin didn't know was that he was witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically destroy the Luftwaffe. Within 18 months, these flying milk bottles would transform from objects of derision into instruments of terror. The mathematics of destruction were loaded in those wings. 3,400 rounds of ammunition, a combined rate of fire of 6,000 rounds per minute, enough concentrated firepower to saw a Messerschmitt in half in less than 2 seconds. The P-47 had emerged from a panic in 1940. Alexander Kartveli, the chief designer, created a monster that redefined the possible. "It will be a dinosaur," he admitted, "but a dinosaur with good proportions." It weighed 9,900 pounds, empty, 65% more than its predecessor. Test pilots asked, "Does this thing actually fly?" It flew like a locomotive. The massive Pratt & Whitney engine produced 2,000 horsepower. It used a turbo supercharger that fed on exhaust gases to deliver sea-level performance in the stratosphere. But early training was brutal. The 56 Fighter Group lost 18 pilots and 41 aircraft just learning to fly it. It killed more Americans in training than Germans would in the first months of combat. But those who mastered it discovered a secret: you didn't fly it, you aimed it. In the first combat encounters, the Germans laughed. It couldn't turn with a Focke-Wulf 190. It couldn't climb with a Messerschmitt 109. German ace Joseph Priller reported to headquarters, "The new American fighter is meat for the slaughter. It flies like a truck, turns like a freight train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. Our boys are calling them Indians, fat targets, pretending to be warriors. Even the British RAF joked about it," they said. The best evasive maneuver in a P-47 was to unstrap and run around the cockpit. But something strange happened. The P-47s that were shot down had absorbed incredible punishment. They refused to die. The turning point came on June 26, 1943. Lieutenant Robert Johnson was trapped in a dying aircraft. 21 cannon shells exploded across his plane. The canopy shattered. Hydraulic fluid sprayed. Fire erupted behind the panel. He tried to bail out, but the canopy was jammed, welded shut by a shell. He was a sitting duck. A Focke-Wulf 190 pulled up behind him. The German pilot opened fire with cannons and machine guns. Johnson huddled behind his armor plate and prayed. The Thunderbolt took it all. The German ran out of cannon ammo. He repositioned and fired his machine guns until they were empty too. He pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck. He looked at Johnson, shook his head, saluted, and flew away. Johnson landed with over 200 bullet holes. One cannon shell inches from his head. Another detonated against the armor plate. The plane was a sieve, but it brought him home. German intelligence refused to believe it. No aircraft could survive that, but the P-47 did. By July 1943, the Americans learned how to fight. Colonel Hubert Zemke discovered the secret: don't turn with them, don't climb with them, use your weight, use your power. Dive from 30,000 feet. A P-47 could reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter. It became a turkey shoot. The Thunderbolts would roll inverted and dive, reaching speeds that made escape impossible. At the bottom of the dive, the heavy machine guns spoke. German survivors described it as facing a wall of lead. Aircraft caught in the convergence didn't just fall, they disintegrated. During the Schweinfurt raid, Major David Schilling's flight Dove on German destroyers, a German gunner recalled, "They came down like hammers from heaven. The aircraft ahead of me simply came apart. Wings separated, tails severed, shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds a heavy fighter became nothing. When you hit them with all 8 guns, they explode, literally cut in half." The pilot never knew what hit him. In January 1944, the nightmare evolved. New paddle-blade propellers arrived. Suddenly the fat fighter could climb. German ace Heinz Nock wrote in his diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. We tried to escape, but they followed us up to 30,000 feet. My wingman was blown apart, nothing left but smoke. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year." The new propeller changed the sound, a deep, threatening rumble visible from miles away. Ground troops called it Donnerschlag, thunderclap. When they heard it, they knew death was coming. By June 1944, the P-47 became the Jabo, the fighter bomber. It wasn't just a fighter anymore, it was flying artillery. It carried 2 1,000-pound bombs and rockets, a bomb load equal to a medium bomber. Colonel Hans von Luck experienced this terror in Normandy. They came in low, so low you could see the pilots' faces. The sound was terrifying. Then the hammer of those heavy machine guns, a column of our trucks, simply ceased to exist. 20 vehicles transformed into burning wreckage in one pass on D-Day. Over 500 P-47s covered the beaches. German pilots who tried to attack were massacred. One survivor reported, "The sky belonged to the Americans. You couldn't climb over them, couldn't dive under them. Their guns turned our fighters into aluminum rain." In June alone, Thunderbolts destroyed 651 locomotives and 3,847 trucks. The Wehrmacht could only move at night. The P-47 was so tough it even hunted jets. The Messerschmitt 262 was 100 miles per hour faster, but it wasn't tougher. Major George Bostwick shot down 2 jets. He reported they are faster, but they can't turn and they can't take punishment. One good burst and they come apart like they are made of paper. The final demonstration of American power came on January 1, 1945. Operation Bodenplatte. The Luftwaffe launched a desperate surprise attack on American airfields. They destroyed 22 Thunderbolts on the ground. A captured German pilot laughed at the wreckage and asked, "What do you think of that?" Major George Brooking pointed to the flight line. "By tomorrow we'll have 40 new ones. How long will it take you to replace your pilots?" The German's smirk disappeared. He realized the truth. America built 15,683 Thunderbolts at peak production. One was finished every hour around the clock. They buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of steel and lead. By the end of the war, the statistics were staggering: 3,752 aircraft destroyed in the air, 3,315 destroyed on the ground, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 6,000 armored vehicles destroyed. They fired 135 million rounds of ammunition. German General Adolf Galland, the head of the fighter arm, admitted the fatal mistake. "We saw this big heavy fighter and laughed. We said they built a bomber and called it a fighter, but we were the ones who didn't understand. They understood that in a war the plane that could take punishment and deliver firepower would win. They were right. We stopped laughing when we realized they didn't need to turn. They just pointed those guns at you and you ceased to exist." The laughter died with our comrades. The P-47 Thunderbolt entered the war as a joke and ended it as an instrument of annihilation.